Hi, my name is David, and today I want to share my story with you. You might think less of me after this, but I just can't keep it to myself anymore. I'm 41 years old, working as a chef at one of the best restaurants in New York. I've always loved cooking since childhood, and I was lucky enough to turn my hobby into a successful career. I've been married for 15 years. My wife Sarah is an interior designer. We don't have children, we're both too passionate about our work. My mother-in-law Emily has always been more of a friend to me than a relative. We got along great, often chatting about life and joking around. She was very active and cheerful despite her age. But about a year ago, Emily lost her job. The small shop where she was a manager closed down. It hit her hard, and she fell into depression. One day, when Sarah and I were visiting her, I suddenly said, "Emily, why don't you come work at my restaurant? We need an administrator, and you're the perfect candidate. You know, I've always admired your organizational skills." My mother-in-law looked at me in surprise. "Are you serious, David? Do you think I can handle it?" I smiled. "Of course you can. You're our Wonder Woman." Emily laughed and, after some thought, agreed. The next day, my mother-in-law started work. I introduced her to the staff, showed her around the restaurant, and explained her main duties. Emily picked everything up quickly. She quickly integrated into the team, charming everyone with her charisma and sense of humor. I could see her blossoming. The sparkle in her eyes returned, along with her self-confidence. This made me incredibly happy. After a couple of weeks, Emily became so comfortable that she became my real right hand. She took over all the paperwork, communication with suppliers and clients. I had more time for creativity. I could fully focus on the kitchen. We often discussed the menu, came up with new dishes. I was thrilled with my mother-in-law's creativity, her unconventional perspective. One day, Emily came into my kitchen and said, "David, I've been thinking, could you teach me how to cook something special? I want to surprise Sarah, prepare a dinner following all the rules of haute cuisine." I was taken aback. "Are you sure? It's not that simple, you know." But my mother-in-law just waved it off. "Come on, I have a good teacher. Plus, I've always liked fiddling with food. I think I have potential." I shrugged. Why not? And we started our improvised lessons. Every evening after the restaurant closed, we stayed in the kitchen. I showed Emily the basics, how to hold a knife properly, combine ingredients, create beautiful presentations. She was a diligent student, listening attentively, carefully repeating. Sometimes we had funny mishaps. A sauce would burn, or we'd overcook the meat, but we just laughed and started over. Gradually, our lessons became more professional. I started giving Emily more complex tasks, letting her work on real orders. And you know what? She really had talent. Some of her dishes turned out even better than mine. My mother-in-law beamed with pride when I praised her, and I suddenly started looking at her differently, not as a relative or friend, but as a woman, attractive, passionate, desirable. I didn't even notice how it happened. I just caught myself at some point admiring Emily. Her graceful movements, her mischievous smile, the dimples on her cheeks. And when she accidentally brushed against me with her hand or hip, it was like an electric shock through my body. I tried to snap out of it, reminding myself who she was, but you can't control your heart. We started staying in the kitchen longer and longer. Now it wasn't just culinary experiments, but long conversations over a glass of wine. Emily talked about her dreams, regrets, unfulfilled ambitions. I saw her so open, vulnerable for the first time. I wanted to hug her, comfort her, protect her from the whole world. It was madness, honestly. One day I couldn't take it anymore. We were working on a new dessert, tiramisu with raspberries. Emily messed up the recipe somehow, and we ended up with an unappetizing mass. She wrinkled her nose so funny that I couldn't resist and wiped a drop of cream from her cheek. It was like an electric shock. My mother-in-law froze, looking at me with wide eyes. And then suddenly she leaned forward and kissed me. I should have pushed her away. I should have said it was wrong, we couldn't do this. But instead I returned the kiss, hungrily, frantically. In that second, the whole world ceased to exist. There were only her lips, her hands on my shoulders, the beating of her heart. We kissed like possessed, tearing clothes off each other, right there on the cutting table among pots and pans. It was like a hurricane, just as spontaneous and all-consuming. We dissolved in each other, forgetting about everything in the world. Every touch, every breath was filled with an incredible force of feelings. In those moments, we experience something that defies description in words. I had never experienced anything like it before, not with Sarah, not with other women. We came to our senses only a few hours later. We regained consciousness, started frantically getting dressed. It was scary to look each other in the eyes. What had happened between us was too obvious, too frank. I saw Emily's hands shaking, and I felt the same. Shock, confusion, horror at what we had done. God, what have I done? We didn't say a word to each other. We just hurriedly went home as if hiding from a crime scene. And that's exactly what it was. We had committed a crime against our spouses, our vows and promises, against ourselves. And now this knowledge burned from within, corroding the soul with guilt and shame. The next day, for the first time in my life, I didn't want to go to work. I imagined seeing Emily, and my insides twisted into a tight knot. But there was nowhere to go. I gathered my courage, put on a polite smile, and drove to the restaurant. All day I carefully avoided my mother-in-law, said I was busy, locked myself in the kitchen. She didn't seem eager to communicate either, probably feeling the same way. This continued for several days. We barely talked, only about work matters. We didn't even look at each other, afraid to read condemnation in each other's eyes, or even worse, desire. The atmosphere was tense. The tension was growing. I understood that it couldn't continue like this for long. Sooner or later, we would have to talk, to sort out what had happened between us. That moment came on Friday evening. We stayed late. We needed to prepare for a weekend banquet. When everyone left, I decided to approach Emily. She was sitting at her desk in her office, staring at one spot. Seeing me, she flinched and tried to stand up. I gestured for her to stay, sat down opposite her. "Emily, we need to talk," I began, looking at my hands. "What happened last week? I don't know how to explain it. I'm sorry, I behaved like a complete scoundrel. I took advantage of the situation, of your weakness." "David, stop!" My mother-in-law interrupted me. "No one took advantage of anyone. We both wanted it, even though we understood how wrong it was. So don't blame just yourself." I was silent, crumpling a napkin in my hands. Words came with difficulty, stuck in my throat. But I had to say it. I had to set everything straight. Still, I shouldn't have let it go so far. I love Sarah. She's the most important person in my life. What happened? It won't happen again. Ever. Emily looked at me for a long time, then quietly said, "Okay, David, you're right. It will be better for everyone. I respect your decision, and I'm grateful that you're honest with me. Let's just forget about it, okay? Let's pretend nothing happened." I nodded, unable to utter a word. My heart was breaking with pain and regret. But I knew I was doing the right thing, for Sarah's sake, for the sake of our marriage, even if some part of me would forever long for what Emily and I could never have. Life returned to its usual routine. My mother-in-law and I still worked together, but we minimized our communication. Only what was necessary. No personal conversations or evening gatherings. This suited me. It was easier to deal with temptation, to keep myself in check. But a storm was still raging in my soul. Memories of that night wouldn't leave me. I couldn't stop thinking about those moments spent with Emily. Questions kept popping up in my head. What if everything had turned out differently? What if I had thrown away all principles and given in to my feelings? These thoughts only exacerbated my inner torment. Sarah began to notice my condition. She asked if everything was okay, if I wasn't too overloaded at work. I brushed it off, citing stress and lack of sleep. Lying to my wife was disgusting, but what could I say? "Darling, I slept with your mother and now I can't find peace. It would break her heart, destroy our family. I couldn't do that to her." At work, I started snapping at my subordinates. I nitpicked every little thing, made scandals over trifles. Emily looked at me with silent reproach, but said nothing. She knew that I was punishing myself, torturing myself with guilt. The climax came a month later. We had an important reception, serving some political bigwig. I wanted everything to be perfect, drove the staff to exhaustion. In the midst of the evening, a waiter dropped a tray of appetizers. I exploded, started yelling like a madman. I waved my arms, spitting and not mincing words. And then Emily intervened. She came up to me, took my hand and said quietly but firmly, "David, calm down, let's go out, we need to talk." I wanted to object, but my mother-in-law looked at me in such a way that my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I silently nodded and followed her to the back room. As soon as the door closed behind us, Emily turned around and angrily hissed, "What are you doing, David? Have you completely lost it? This is your restaurant, your reputation, and you're yelling at the staff like a fishwife." I opened my mouth to snap back, but suddenly deflated. I lowered my shoulders, ran my hand over my face, and bitterly, hopelessly admitted, "I can't do this anymore, Emily. I can't pretend nothing happened, pretend that I'm not going crazy with desire. See you every day and understand that I can never be with you. It's beyond my strength." My mother-in-law took a shaky breath. Tears glistened in her eyes, her lips trembled. She stepped towards me, took my face in her hands. "David, darling, you think it's easy for me? You think I don't berate myself for weakness, don't hate myself for betraying my daughter? But what's left for us? Only to endure and stay silent, for the sake of our families, for the sake of what's right." I groaned through clenched teeth. I buried my forehead in her shoulder, squeezing my eyes shut until it hurt. How I wanted to spit on everything and send this righteousness to hell, to grab Emily in my arms, take her to the edge of the world, where no one knows us, where we can start everything from scratch. But I couldn't. I simply had no right to do so. I had obligations, vows that I had made before the altar, for better or for worse, for richer, for poorer. I had to keep my word, no matter what it cost me, so I just stood there, inhaling Emily's scent, absorbing her warmth, memorizing every feature, and then I gently pulled away and said in a muffled voice, "You're right. We have to be strong. We have to think about others, not ourselves. Forgive me for everything, for the pain, for the disappointment. You deserve so much more." Emily smiled weakly through her tears. She ran her fingertips over my cheek, barely touching. "No, David, it's you who should forgive me, for not resisting, for falling in love when I had no right to. You're the best man in the world, never doubt that." And then she left, proudly straightening her shoulders and holding her head high. My queen, my unfulfilled dream. I watched her walk away and felt something inside me dying, shattering into pieces, scattering into shards. This is the price of the right choice, the price of loyalty and duty. From that day on, Emily and I tried to behave as if nothing had happened. We worked, communicated, even joked sometimes, but we both understood. It was just a mask, armor behind which we hide our true feelings. This forbidden, agonizing love had sunk too deep into us. It had corroded our souls and hearts too much. At home, I also played the role of an exemplary husband. I started spending more time with Sarah, arranging surprises, giving gifts. I was afraid she would suspect something was wrong, sense the falseness. But my wife seemed to notice nothing. She was happy with the signs of attention, said how much she loved me. And I looked at her and hated myself for pretending, for cowardice, for not being able to be honest even with myself. But it was necessary. It was right, damn this righteousness. A year passed. Nothing changed, only the pain dulled. Emily and I still loved each other, secretly, hopelessly. Sometimes I caught her piercing, wistful gaze. I saw how her fingers trembled when she accidentally touched me, and I myself burned with desire, with the impossibility of touching, hugging. But this is all we have left. Furtively thrown glances, fleeting touches, shared memories that we will keep until the end of our days, because it can't be any other way. Because love, no matter how strong, also has its boundaries, its moral principles and foundations. I know many will condemn me. They'll say, "Weakling, wimp. I should have grabbed my happiness, spit on everyone and everything." But I can't do that. I don't know how to step over conscience, to treat others' feelings with disregard, even if these others are my own wife. So I'll live as I live, with this burden on my heart, with an unhealing wound in my soul. Maybe someday it will get easier. Maybe I'll learn not to think about Emily every free minute. And for now I have work that helps me forget, and a family that I must cherish and value. That's the story, friends. Without a happy ending, without the triumph of passion over reason. An ordinary story of human weakness and willpower. Maybe someone will learn a lesson from it. Maybe it will make someone feel better knowing they're not alone, imperfect, mistaken. I'm not asking for approval or support. I just wanted to share what I've been carrying inside for so long. I guess it's time to turn this page and start living on. For myself, for Sarah, and for Emily, who deserves much more than stolen moments and hidden sadness in her eyes. Take care of your loved ones. Don't betray those who love you. And remember, we are responsible for our choices, whatever motives they may be dictated by. That's how it is, guys. Thanks for listening. That's all, I guess. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.